All right. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, so I'm going to do this in 5 minutes. So here's what I figured I'd talk to you about today. First of all, thank you very much for having me. What I figured we'd talk to you a little bit about today is some of how to adopt and integrate cyber risk strategies into our business, and specifically focusing on a couple different areas, IT risk and protecting our confidentiality and integrity and availability of our data. Right, so as I started in this job, I was trying to figure out, exactly what was I going to do in those two areas, and then, like I said, I focused on the protecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability first, and that's the stuff we're all very familiar with, right? That's the cyber hygiene stuff, the password controls, the user awareness training, all the policies and standards and stuff that we put in place. But what we generally forget is that all of those things exist in order for us to figure out what type of risk exist in our environment and what types of things we need to protect, right? And generally what we end up forgetting to ask ourselves is what's actually the appropriate amount of risk for us to take on as an organization. And this becomes extremely important when we're, of course, trying to talk to our businesses, right? Because our businesses don't understand all of the technical controls and why they're there. All they want to do is use IT. All they want to do is provide services like they're expecting to. And it's our job to figure out, as CISOs, on how to actually fill the gap between, yeah, see, this is what my users look like, fill the gap between our cyber risk and our technology folks, right? So what we're finding is that as more and more organizations are looking at risk, they're realizing that, hey, there's actually a large safety component, right? We're starting to move a little bit past the concept of keeping all of our data safe all the time or out of keeping our data confidential all the time, because they're in the state and local government area, we end up having a large safety concern, right? That's what they tend to task us with, is stuff that can't be changed or stuff that's of significant concern. Right, so what do you need? You need a CISO that's going to be able to speak all things. And I pulled this from a Deloitte report a little while ago. And the CISO role is changing more and more from being that technologist person to being able to speak to the business and make them understand the amount of risk and issues that they're taking on. And why this becomes important is because often the business doesn't understand what the outcome of the risk that they're taking on is. We see these are where the interesting news stories come from, right? These are the airport attacks. These are the water system attacks. These are the things that sometimes get impacted that aren't necessarily even directly technology related in our minds, right? The elections stuff. We're all very familiar with how elections work and generally the systems that are involved. And a lot of times, they're not even technology-focused issues. Us trying to figure out how to handle them. St. Jude's just last week had an issue associated with a pacemaker that ended up impacting their bottom line significantly, right? They had a huge drop in their stock prices because there was a vulnerability that was released about a pacemaker that was really old, and they had since fixed it. We're all familiar with some of the stuff that happened in our federal government, and what we're turning to and what we're trending towards is saying that, hey, look, the services that we provide are no longer something that we can operate outside of understanding what's happening with our risk, right? We need to understand that, hey, when we're putting these services out there, we need to make sure that we're putting controls in place as part of our risk. And that should be reflected in our budget model as well, right? So when you look at private organizations, you recognize that, hey, most of them don't offer internet services to our home users without actually providing antivirus as an add-on service, right? Comcast, it's free. Verizon's, it's cheaper, but it's part of the services that they provide. When we provide networks, we're also providing firewalls with those networks. When we provide any type of technology service, including those in the future, such as things like cars, we need to make sure that we're implementing security controls along with them and build them into the service and the cost of the service. It eliminates that issue associated with budget. So as I'm coming to 1 minute up, I'm going to try to, ransomware. Sorry, I almost forgot about ransomware. Can't forget about that. That's also one of those major areas that we ended up having a significant impact this year in the healthcare organization, right? It doesn't necessarily even have to be the compromise of data. It can just make it not available. And one of the things I thought was interesting that you can look at very quickly, number 1 and number 8, this is an Intel top 10 cybersecurity predictions for 2016. And as we're getting towards the end of the year, I figured it was kind of appropriate for us to take a look at. Our role as government is going to expand in the cybersecurity area, and we expect it to continue down that way. We're also finding that regardless of the actual compromises that we're having, our fundamental trust in the services that we're providing in the IT landscape is becoming somewhat undermined, and we've got to figure out ways to adopt and address that. So I figure that probably we're going to end up with this NASIO priority being in the top 10 for a while to come. And with that, I'll end with a nice little cartoon that I'm a big fan of. So thank you very much.